Good evening, everybody. So today we have a very special webinar on technical case studies on inoculation and nebulizer as well from SNAM Alloys Chennai. Mr. Nadimuthu of SNAM Alloys Chennai is with us for this presentation. He has already participated in one of the panel discussion before as well, but I think this is going to be a special occasion as we are going for the specific case studies and not only a discussion, but something which already someone has proved or someone has tried and they got the results. So those case studies we are going to see today, and definitely will get some uh, good inputs or proper inputs from these case studies where we are facing issues. We can correlate those case studies with our example, our problems, and get some solutions. So definitely it will be a very helpful and handy session for all of us. So thank you, sir, for joining this for this webinar and giving me time. So I request you to start the webinar and case studies.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Sandeep Kulkarni, for this excellent platform that you are providing to all the foundrymen to enhance their knowledge and how to apply. Good evening, everyone, and it's a Sunday evening, and to all the attendees who are taking the time off, I hope this presentation will really be worth it. Today happens to be some festival season also. I was just talking to Mr. Sandeep, and Kolhapur is celebrating the end of Diwali, and here we have in South India a festival called Kartigai Deepam. It is a festival where, in Tiruvannamalai, the Lord Shiva temple, they light a big diya, and in all houses they light lamps and have a puja. And on this particular day, for all of you, so we'd like to present you something pertinent to what you have. We understand the reason that this is on Sunday where you can be relaxed, and we don't have a 5-day week, it's all 6-day week for all foundries in India. And so today is the day where you can, outside of all your work tensions, devote some time for the learning exercise. And I hope the case studies that we present here are going to be useful and interactive to you. So just to tell you why, the cone of learning, how exactly do we learn and how exactly do we remember? So we only remember 10% of what we read. If we ask you what you did in your technical, courses today, you would hardly remember 10% of it. What we hear, we remember 20% after, we have heard it. What we see, we remember 30%. But what we see and hear, say a movie, we remember 50% of a movie which took you gripping movie. You would still remember it after many years. We remember what we say 70%, and 90% we remember of what we say and do. So for me, whatever we have done at the SNAM Alloys and the R&D center and during our technical visits in India and abroad, all the learnings are what we have seen, we have done, and what we can remember vividly is what we are going to transfer to you today. Now, why case studies? This is just what I took. If I wanted to explain to people why should we have case studies, and I just Googled it. And there is a magazine called, Natural Clinical Practice Cardiovascular Medicine. Is a journal for practicing physicians. And they have a lot of case studies in their magazine, in that journal. So the editor says, why should we have a case study? Why do you think, doctors need it? So these are instructive example. It is very immersive when you go through a case study, it goes back in your mind. You keep recollecting, and you live the moment along with your experiences, like in a movie. Why do we have some movies that are there in our memory for a long time? When you see a particular scene in the movie and you are able to relate to it, something that has happened to you is happening there in the movie, then you like that movie. It is the same way with a case study. As the case studies evolve and unfold, you are able to immerse yourself into that particular case study related to some problem that you have seen, and based on that, the learning, and as I do the cone of learning, what you retain, what you take forward, and what you apply is going to be a very high percentage. Now, with these points, let me go on to the 4 case studies that are going to be presented today. We are going to have case studies 1 and 2 related to the nodularizers. So one is regarding the size and second is regarding the grade. So these are some interesting case studies, and I'm sure you would be able to relate to it. And it is the same with the inoculant. So we have a case study on the need for a preconditioner and how it helps in improving the metal quality, and about some inoculants that are rare earth based. So we are also going to explain to you with some case studies about the need for rare earth based inoculant in some specialized requirements and how they are improving the quality of the casting. So let me take you to the first case study, which is on ferrosilicon magnesium between a 2 to 20 mm size and a conventional size that you would be using. Now, what we are going to present in this case study is how a wider size distribution increases the performance of the nodularizer in ductile ion treatment. So these are the 2 cases we have. On one side, I have a typical wide distribution, which is 2 to 20 mm of the nodularizer, or 2 to 25 mm. And on the other side, I have the narrow size distribution, 10 to 20 mm, 10 to 25 mm, 15 to 25, 15 to 35. And we will see that, by measurement, how 2 to 20 provides a better compaction, is more dense. Naturally, when you fill it with a funnel into your treatment pocket in the treatment ladle, it is going to be a dense compaction. When it is dense compaction, there are lesser voids. When there are lesser voids, the molten metal that you're pouring inside, it takes time to percolate. It doesn't just flow immediately and get into contact. When that happens, there is a delayed reaction. The delayed reaction happens, then what happens? You will have less of magnesium that is volatile and burning, and more magnesium available for nodularization. Losses of the magnesium are reduced, and that will result in improved properties. All these case studies, we have done experiments at the R&D center. Some we have gone to the customer end, done some initial trials, then come back to the R&D center, refined whatever are there by taking their metal compositions and then providing the conclusions. Now, a visual comparison. So we took 1 kg of 2 to 20 and 1 kg of 10 to 20 mm. We put it in a beaker in the R&D lab, whatever was there, and we filled it up, and we checked the bulk density with the reading, and this is what it occupied here, 420 and 520 cc. It occupied in the narrow distribution but bigger size material. So roughly translating to a bulk density of 2.38 grams here, and it is 1.92, which is a 24% better compaction of the 2 to 20 wider distribution. So as I told you, because of this, there are going to be lesser losses due to burning of magnesium, because the metal cannot immediately react over the whole surface area of a larger material and create the violence and the volatility and the burning losses. So what can happen with this is you can work on a reduced usage of magnesium alloys also. So how do we go about it is what we did the experiment at the R&D center. So typically, we did the case study with here this is a lanthanum based magnesium alloy with 3% calcium. So these are alloys that are used popularly here. I would say popularly in the foundries here in India. And we took a 2 to 20 mm and a 10 to 20 mm, and we did two addition rates, 1% and 1.1%. We used the Tundish treatment ladle, and we had the magnesium, then we had the inoculant and the covering scrap, and we poured and conducted the experiments. And we had the 1-inch Y block as the test bar. We did step blocks, and then we had the AFS coupons for the microstructure analysis. Now, based on this, you can find the nodularity is almost the same. The nodule count is similar. The residual magnesium, interestingly, is also similar. We meet the ultimate tensile strength for the 500 bar 7 grade, for which we had the chemical composition. We met the elongation, and we met the hardness. So the 2 to 20 mm distribution performed as well as the 10 to 20. Now this is for one grade, and interestingly for you, a 10 to 20 mm at 1.1% and a 2 to 20 at 1% had similar results. So you can see that a reduced usage of magnesium alloy is very much possible. Just a minute. I think the screen is stuck. And I have to move the panes because they are hiding. So this is on a grade of, I'm sorry that I am not able to see the full screen. Okay, so on a 7012 grade, again the experiments were conducted, and the same 2 to 20 at 1% and 1.1, 10 to 20 at 1 and 1.1. And here again you can find similar results. Another grade, 9011, where you have a magnesium of 8 to 10%, 0.8 to 1.2% of rare earth, and 0.8 to 1.2% of calcium. Here again, you will find the repeatability, the consistency, that a 2 to 20 is performing equally good as a 10 to 20 mm size distribution of the ferrosilicon magnesium at 1.1%. So what are the inferences from the case study? You can find an improved packing density when you have a wider distribution. A 2 to 20 mm size is found to produce similar or equivalent results as of 10 to 20. Another thing we can find is, even with a 1% addition, the addition rate, compared to 10 to 20 of 1.1, you are able to get the result, which means there is a possibility of reduction in the usage of the alloy by changing the size distribution of the alloy. And 2 to 20 can be used for treatment ladle capacities up to 1000 kg. I hope most of the foundries use the 110 ladle, and for such foundries it is very good. And foundries which have a higher capacity, they can use a 2 to 25 mm treatment size. The benefits, so once again, to just summarize: improved packing density, which results in a reduced reaction violence, which means more safety. When there is some worker holding the treatment ladle and standing beside, so the flares and the violence and there are no sparks or anything coming out, so it is much safer for the person. You have a very consistent magnesium recovery, which is seen from the residual magnesium and from the consistent metallurgical properties. Now the next is on standardization of ferrosilicon magnesium grades. So if you look at the experiment that I had just shown you, I had shown you 3 different grades of ferrosilicon magnesium. A lanthanum-based ferrosilicon magnesium, and 2 with varying percentages of magnesium. One was 7% nominal and the other was 9%. Now, these are the grades that we find mostly in India with 5 to 7%, 6 to 8%, and 8 to 10%. We get inquiries where people want, even more than 10% magnesium. And in terms of the rare earth, from 0.5, 1%, 2%, 3%. Calcium 1, 2, 3. Now, every addition is going to cost money, right? And whatever we have seen from our supplies and visiting customers who are buying, that in the US and Canada, the grades are 3511 and 4500. 3511 is 3 to 5% magnesium. Look at that as a comparison between 8 to 10%. And 4500, of course, is a specialized grade where for some thick section, people do not want to use rare earth. But look at the magnesium percentage is only 4 to 5%. Now, some of the assumptions that people have when they prefer high magnesium content in nodulizer, they feel by if I buy this inoculant, I'm going to reduce my magnesium, my treatment alloy percentage. True. But you think the treatment cost can be reduced. Now, these are the areas that are contentious. Your addition rate alone you will reduce, but you end up with a host of problems that we will show as we go through this slide in this case study. The variation can be met for varying sulfur level by varying tapping temperature, varying pouring time, any excess sulfur from the mold, thick section in the casting. So these are the assumptions for the foundryman when they decide, give me a higher percentage of magnesium alloy, right? But look at it, when you're going to increase the tapping temperature, just because you want to have a higher, pouring time, and for that particular reason, you are going to use a higher magnesium alloy, what happens? So the advantages, as I said, are this is what the foundryman assumes when he wants to place an order for a higher magnesium alloy. Fine, sir. And yes, your sulfur percentage could be varying. So you feel, I need more magnesium for desulfurization and the balance should be available for nodularizing. Perfectly right. But the disadvantages are you have a high magnesium activity, which means you're going to get more violence, more loss, and this in turn is going to reduce the nucleation potential, because during the turbulence, you're going to take away a lot of your inoculating other elements that are present, and they all get into the slag, and you lose the nucleation potential. Magnesium is a carbide promoter. And when you have carbides, you do not have free graphitize for overcoming the contraction of austenite, and therefore you will have a shrinkage tendency, and you need more inoculation because a lot of the inoculating element nuclei that are present in the molten metal have been taken away in the slag. So what can we do? How can we optimize the magnesium usage? So we can reduce the magnesium and optimize it by adding rare earths, because cerium, by now you will see that there are cerium based inoculants, lanthanum based inoculants. So cerium especially is a very reactive element to sulfur than magnesium. The first, when you add these elements into your molten metal, the first sulfide formed is cerium sulfide, which is more stable, and it can therefore protect loss of magnesium because cerium reacts with the sulfur, and therefore magnesium is available for nodularization. Lanthanum helps in improving the nodularity and the nodule count, and it has a tendency to reduce the shrinkage tendency. Rare earths therefore have less fading tendency with time compared to magnesium because they are more stable. They have inoculating effects also. The demand for a higher percentage inoculation may come down when you combine a rare earth into your magnesium alloy. They have high melting and boiling points when compared to magnesium and stable. The tramp elements which deteriorate the nodal shape can be taken care of by the rare earth. When I mean TRE, it is a combination of cerium and lanthanum is called the total rare earth. So careful selection, however, has to be done because in thick sections, a higher cerium can lead to chunky graphite. So you can optimize the usage also by supplementing with calcium. So calcium is a protective element added in the nodulizer. Calcium oxidizes faster than magnesium. If you look at the Ellingham diagrams, CES in terms of the sulfides for Ellingham diagram, and calcium oxide is, before magnesium. So it oxidizes faster. Therefore, the magnesium loss again here is reduced and more magnesium is available for nodularization. So calcium helps in reducing the reaction violence also. Calcium forms a crusty slag after treatment, which can be easily removed. Calcium also has nucleating effects. So just to explain the ductile ion mechanism to you, there are a lot of theories. So even what I'm going to present to you is this is the latest theory. So we had the gas bubble theory, the oxysulfide theory, and this is called the silicate theory. Each of the earlier theories were disputed, and this theory came in after we had the scanning electron microscope where they could see the nodules very well and the nuclei and the core of the nuclei. And based on this theory is where now, all the alloys, the developments are taking place. So the core of this nucleus is a magnesium sulfide and a calcium sulfide or the cerium sulfide. The shell is MgO SiO2 or 2MgO SiO2. So this is the reason why also we say, you need some oxygen and sulfur in your base metal. So no one prefers 0% sulfur in a base metal for ductile ion. You need some amount of sulfur and oxygen. Now on this, the substrate of cerium sulfide, cerium oxide, lanthanum sulfide, and calcium oxide, SiO2, aluminum oxide, SiO2, these calcium, barium, aluminum, these substrates, they sit on the shell and core. Now, this is very, very important because this substrate is needed for graphite to precipitate. So, magnesium by itself will not provide any potent nucleation sites, but it forms all these small particles of sulfide and oxide. And then, as I told you, the sulfides of barium, cerium, lanthanum. This mentions strontium because there's some foundries, ductile ion foundries, which also use strontium-based inoculant and are able to get results. So it is, though we say that, in strontium and calcium nullifies the effect of strontium, we have seen this, some foundries are buying a strontium-based inoculant and they are able to successfully use strontium. Okay. Now, when this happens, when we have a lesser percentage of magnesium and a higher percentage of, when I say higher, it is in absolute terms, compared to a high magnesium, low TRE, a slightly higher TRE and calcium and a slightly lower magnesium. That provides a calm and gentle reaction, which gives better conditions for subsequent nucleation. When there is a lot of violence, there is going to be a lot of turbulence, oxidation taking place, naturally a lot of dross and slag formation. So with this sort of a combination, we are able to provide a gentle and calm reaction. The treatment reactivity decides either numerous small sites are formed for further nucleation or large agglomerates of slag clusters are formed. So generally speaking, we want a good nodule count. A nodule count is a property of whatever I have explained on the nucleation. So the way the magnesium and the calcium and the rare earth and then the inoculating element, they combine, you have a lot of nucleating sites, they result in a higher nodule count. So how is high magnesium containing grade dangerous? Like we said, Mg forms MgO and MgS, but they are lower boiling point elements than, say, as I explained to you with cerium and all. So these gases are responsible for violence and flares. There is some amount of magnesium and magnesium sulfide that are needed for the core. That is all. Beyond that, anything else is going to go up as a gas and it is going to be lost. So buying a higher grade of magnesium, ultimately that magnesium is not going to serve the purpose for anyone, because it is going to burn away or it is going to result in a flare and it is going to be lost. So ultimately we will be increasing the entropy of the universe or the ecosystem of the foundry. So use of 8 to 10% gives you effectively higher magnesium, but it gives less protection from calcium on oxidation. It's more violent and less nucleation potential. But for the same thing, you just add a 10% more of calcium and TRE, but you reduce the magnesium content by more than 15 to 20%, you are able to get the same results and less violent and more nucleation potential. Now the same thing we are going to, but this is how we generally select. How do we select? We say I have higher tapping temperature, so give me a higher magnesium, because I know that some magnesium is going to be lost. I want to make it up. I have higher sulfur in my charge mix. For some reason, my purchase feels I will only get you this particular grade, or I have a pig iron which has only this percentage of sulfur, I am not able to get a lesser percentage. Fine, then I have a pouring time, because for the same treatment lyle size, my box has different weights now. So this particular product takes a longer line to pour, and therefore a longer pouring time. Therefore let me have a higher magnesium. My treatment time is high or low, because how I am design my tundish, how I design my pouring time, and how I allow the treatment time. So if it is going to be high, then I want a higher magnesium content. The casting thickness is thick, so I want low, but the casting thin, I want somewhere medium between 6 to 8%. So these are the combinations at which at the foundry a customer decides this is what I want. But what we are going to show you is, when you do the decision, how can you think in a different way? Look at the mechanism of nucleation and the magnesium treatment, and how that learning will help you in selecting the right treatment alloy and the right inoculant, and that is going to save you a lot of money also. So we did some experiments with a medium or low magnesium grade and compared it with the higher magnesium and higher TRE. Now all the grades that I am presenting here are what a customer wants here, our customers are buying. So we wanted to see how we can provide them a better alternative. It can also be cost effective as they keep using it, and they're able to optimize it. So for a 9022, which will be 9 to 10% magnesium, 1.8 to 2.2% rare earth, 1.8 to 2.2% calcium, 8 to 5 would be 8 to 10% magnesium, 2.6 to 3 or 3.3% rare earth, and a 3.3% calcium. And next we have another grade where we had 9011, where a slightly lesser rare earth but higher calcium. So against these two, we thought, how can we reduce some amount of magnesium, slightly increase the rare earth and the calcium, and see how it performs. So we added at 1.1%, so that we see that there's not much of difference in the magnesium losses. We used a furnace capacity of 300 kg, and this experiment was conducted on a ductile line of 500 bar 7 grade. This tapping temperature is a normal tapping temperature that we have seen, generally followed here, 1532 or so. And the treatment method we used was a sandwich with Tundish, and the inoculant we used was a 0.3% high becquerel barium, calcium, aluminum inoculant. The same was used in the post-treatment also. In the pouring time, we maintained it within 8 minutes, which is recommended. Tensile samples were taken from a 1-inch Y block of section thickness 25 mm. And the micro samples were taken from the AFS coupon. And these are the trial results. So if you look at the residual magnesium, it is the same. But of course, here the addition rate is 1.1. We wanted to see that, how it is comparable. Nodularity is the same, nodule count in 10 mm and 20 mm step blocks. And look at the hardness, the tensile strength, elongation, and the yield strength. In our R&D center, of course, the conditions are ideal in terms of the charge mix that we use. So we have always found that 500 bar 7 grade, the elongation was always well above 7%. And these are the microstructures. You can find these are the results that I have displayed, and I'm showing you the microstructure here taken from the AFS coupon. They're all very good for both 10 to, and this is the other grade for 7012 versus a 9% magnesium and a 9% magnesium with 3% calcium. So we reduce the calcium by 1% and we reduce the magnesium by 2% and see what happens. So here again, you will see that the residual magnesium, the nodularity, the hardness, tensile strength, elongation, and yield strength all have been met. And the microstructure for these. So what are the inferences from this? There is no need to go for a high magnesium variant when you have TRE and calcium more than 10%. 1% in each. You can reduce the magnesium percentage. And you can have it maximum 2% depending on the conditions. So this low variant magnesium produces similar results when added in 10% excess, but of course foundries can work on optimizing the percentage addition. Again and again, I can tell you, it is all our people have ingenuity. They can fine-tune the processes. That is something that India boasts of, and all our foundrymen, we have seen they can optimize the usages. You can bring it down. We have some foundries in South India, the high pressure line, and we have seen them using the lanthanum-based magnesium alloy at 0.8%. And there are some foundries in the north side also and west where we are seeing less than 1% addition. So today, that fine-tuning is based on your conditions, your treatment procedures, the process, your tapping temperature, the purity of your charge mix. So based on this, you can work on it. But what we are here to present to you is that the myth that you need a high magnesium or high rare earth or high calcium, 3%, 3%, 8 to 10%, not required. We have seen this. We have seen a lot of foundries abroad who are using such less magnesium percentage and still able to get the same quality. They are producing the same grades. Now, next we'll go to the inoculant case studies. Now, these are, one is on the preconditioner. So there is a loss of nucleation potential in a base metal. And how do we bring it back? How do you rejuvenate a base metal so that you are able to produce a good casting? So there was a problem statement with one of the foundries here in India, and they reported to us a problem of lesser tool life while machining a particular grade. So we had some suspicion. We knew this foundry and they had a larger holding furnace. So we thought that could be a reason. We just took some amount of preconditioner with us. And the visit was for just a day. And one of the things, like in India, another, as this is a webinar on also sharing a lot of case studies. So how we find a difference between some foundries abroad and here is the way culturally we are tuned. Example of a foundry in Mexico where we had proposed our product to a foundry. And also there's a difference, between a jobbing foundry and a foundry which runs regular products, where you know very well what are going to be the products that you are going to do, where you can optimize, where you can take trials more confidently. The foundries which do jobbing have a lot of tensions. You take a lot of effort to bring down your rejections to a fairly acceptable level, and then suddenly you see that a couple of products are off and you don't get the order, and then you have to get some new product, and then you again do a firefighting, and the whole process starts again. There is some new product development. Again, the rejection percentages go up. So always for taking trials, there is a constraint sometimes. As in coming back to that example in Mexico, so when they took a trial, their monthly consumption, say, could be around 100 tons. They took 50 tons of the material and ran one full month. They ran a full month of trials. So they are able to look at a very, very consistent level of performance and then decide, okay, this works. Now, this is just to explain to you. Now, when we went here, we took some material and we found that, the metal was being held for more than 1 hour. So we wanted to add some pre-inoculant, but we were given only one conditions like, see, right now we have all these issues. Our production is going on. We cannot stop it. You do one with just preconditioner, one with just our inoculant. You can, we had the thermal analysis equipment with us. You take the readings, then you go back. You have the R&D center foundry. You can do your trials and then come back to us. And that exactly is what we did. So based on whatever we had taken there, we did a root cause analysis and designed a experiment at the R&D center. And the molten metal was as per the chemical composition we took from them, and we held it for 1 hour. We rejuvenated the metal with a preconditioner, the addition rate of 0.15% in the furnace, just 5 minutes before tapping. It was a barium calcium based preconditioner, and 1 to 10 mm size. And inoculation was done while transferring the molten metal at 0.1% addition, which is what they practice. And then the standard section sensitivity blocks of 5, 10, 20 mm were poured. Representative of the customer's casting thickness. And this is the chemical composition that we took from the customer, and we matched it here in the step block. And what all we did is we did a chill test, we did the thermal analysis, we did the mechanical testing, and then we did the microstructure analysis. So at the customer end, we did just the inoculant the way they were using, then we were allowed to take just with the preconditioner. So in both the cases, we found predominantly type D. When we added the preconditioner and the inoculant, we found a tremendous change in the metal quality, and there were no chills. The flake distribution had a type 95%, and the micrographs are presented here. So what happens? The molten metal loses its nucleation upon holding for longer time. Suggestions to the foundry were to provide effective nucleation during holding time for metal held for more than 1 hour to be preconditioned with 0.15% of preconditioner, and their auto dispensing of 0.1 stream inoculation can be continued. Now, based on these suggestions, they were able to implement it and get over the problem of missionability. Now, what exactly is lost during prolonged holding? The furnace metal has inherent nuclei, and it has some percentage of dissolved oxygen. As you keep holding the metal, and when you keep holding the metal, the natural tendency is to raise the temperature and hold the metal. So as you raise the temperature and hold the metal, the other oxides and sulfides that are there, they disintegrate, and the dissolved oxygen percentage keeps on increasing. So how do you compensate for this? By adding preconditioner. What exactly happens is, when you have an excess of dissolved oxygen, the minute you take it for magnesium treatment, so the oxygen and magnesium react, and along with this violent reaction, there is a exothermic reaction when the magnesium burns, and all the other nucleating elements, their oxides also get destroyed, and you have a slag formation, and the nucleation sites are lost. So when we add a preconditioner, it adds an excess of the nucleating elements like a barium or calcium, and they are retained. So that provides the nucleation sites. So preconditioner finds more important in case of variable charge quality, superheated ion, because you raise the temperature, you hold it for long. And typically, when do they happen? When you have a Monday morning, and we don't have it here. Mostly we keep our furnaces running all the while, whereas abroad they work, even the foundries work only 5 days a week. So Friday night or Saturday early morning after the Friday night shift, they shut down the furnace and then they again restart, and then they have to raise the temperature. They have to hold it for a longer time, the first melt, before it reaches its melting temperature. Molding line breakdowns result in the metal waiting for the mold. Naturally, the nucleation potential is lost, or a delay in tooling changes, pattern changes sometimes gets delayed. You try to fit the pattern, then realize there is some repairs to be done on the pattern, or there is some issue. So all these lead to holding of the metal, and that extends the pouring time. Next case study is on rare earth based inoculants. So not recommended in all cases, but there are typical cases where we recommend the use of rare earth based inoculants. So in a thin section ductile ion is a typical area where a rare earth based inoculant is called for. So you have carbides in a thin section, you have high hardness in those areas, you have poor missionability, and you can also have a crack in those areas because of all these reasons. And all this is attributable to a low nodule count, and the solution for that is to improve the nodule count, and to improve the nodule count is the cerium based inoculant, and in our case we call it the SNAM Recal. So why do you need a cerium based this Recal? Why do you need it? Cerium forms cerium sulfide oxide with the S and O in the metal, and I have shown you in the previous slide of the silicate theory how the substrate is with these elements or these compounds. and they have a higher boiling point, and they are liquids at operating temperature. And when solidified, they create that substrate on the shell for the graphite precipitation. Cerium can form also compounds with subversive elements like SB, TEAS, and all this. And these substrates also they have the structure so that they facilitate the graphite precipitation. So there is a relationship between undercooling with casting cooling rate, and we find that a rare earth based ferrosilicon alloy is midway between a rare earth with magnesium treatment and a foundry grade ferrosilicon. So another reason why foundry grade ferrosilicon by itself should not be used. It should be used in conjunction with some other nucleating elements. So we had a trial conducted here, and we took a sensitivity block of 5, 10, and 20 for a grade of 500 bar 7, and 6 to 8% magnesium. This is the least among the grades that we are supplying in India at 1.1% addition rate. And for the first stage, we used barium calcium based Ibercal at 2 to 6. The second stage, you need a control also. So we used one with cerium based recal at 0.2 to 0.7%, and another is inoculant X, which is just pure ferrosilicon based inoculant of the same size and same addition rate. And we took samples at the 10 mm at the 8th minute for analysis. And what are the responses that we measured out of these? We looked at the nodularity, nodule count, carbide content, ferrite purite ratio, hardness, and tensile strength. And we have the results here. Compared to the second stage inoculation, where we used cerium based to inoculant X, we can find a better tensile strength, better yield strength, and softer material. And in terms of the microstructure, you can find here very clearly this 90%, 90%, big difference in the nodule count, 100 to 150 and 300 and above here. And carbides, 5%, no carbides here. Ferrite to purite, a better ratio here. So the recal, the cerium based inoculant is used for improving nodule count, improved nodularity, and control of tramp elements. A recommended usage is as a potent second stage inoculant, which means the addition rates are 0.05 to 0.1% max. The main reason why we say, use it sparingly where it is required and not in high addition rates, because the cerium and lanthanum, they do not, you don't lose them. So as you keep adding your returns, they keep accumulating. So if at 1% point of time your cerium percentage exceeds the permissible limit, then you have a chunky graphite. That is why the addition rates are at a lesser where it is in the second stage, because there is no discrimination between returns of a thin section casting and a thick section casting. The returns are the same. So for carbide prone thin section, you can use it. Where you need a high nodule count, you can use this. Now next is a lanthanum based inoculant. So where lanthanum is used is in ductile iron, where you face a problem of shrinkage or microporosity. Now lanthanum is used in both, as I told you, in the magnesium alloy as well as in the inoculant. There is a higher percentage of lanthanum used in a typical magnesium alloy, like I had explained to you, LAMAC 3, where the lanthanum is in the range of 0.35 to 0.55. Magnesium is much less, 5.5 to 6%. So you can use lanthanum in both cases. So we will see how lanthanum can be used as an inoculant. So the trials conducted similar fashion like what I have told you in all the case studies. Now, why do we use lanthanum? Lanthanum helps in improving the nodule count and hence counters the microporosity issues. It has a nodularizing effect. It supports magnesium. Lanthanum can be added as both a nodalizer and an inoculant. So based on the foundry condition, the choice can be made as a pure lanthanum-based ferrosilicon magnesium or a pure lanthanum-based inoculant for usage. So where do you use the lanthanum-based ferrosilicon magnesium? Where you want to avoid shrinkage tendency and reduce reaction violence. As an inoculant, where you want to tackle any further microporosity arising in a magnesium alloy casting. So here again, the experiment was done similarly. We generally use 500 bar 7 because that is more prominently or a popular grade available. The tapping temperature, the addition rates, these are all typical of what is used. But here what we did is high Becquerel. Now you see in the rare earth based, we had used 0.3 and 0.1, but here it is 0.2% in the treatment ladle and 0.25% of lanthanum. Lanthanum accommodates much better than cerium in terms of section thickness. And the trials were taken. Here the addition rate was 0.83 because this was for a particular foundry where, as I told you, they use less addition rates. So we wanted to do the experiment for them, and we used a lesser addition rate of ferrosilicon magnesium alloy here. And these are the spectro analysis results because we had to match it to the customer requirements. Tensile test bars were poured, and you can see here that the lanthanum based and compared to the X inoculant, which is just a ferrosilicon based, look at the difference in terms of the elongation, the yield strength, and the hardness. So with the inoculant X, you can find that the hardness also increasing, so which can create problems. And in the microstructure, in terms of X to the nodule count and the nodularity. So based on this, you can find that a better response to microporosity is addressed with lanthanum. We can see the microcoupons here, the AFS microcoupons, and you can see here the microporosities with a pure just ferrosilicon based inoculant and lanthanum based inoculant. So at the same level of residual magnesium, fading issue is found to be addressed better when we have SNAM-LACAL and a lower addition rate. Nodule count improvement was seen, and tendency for microporosity has been eliminated. So even with a low residual magnesium, we are able to, which means not increasing the magnesium. When means if I am going to add a lanthanum-based treatment alloy, the magnesium percentage will also go up. Here, by doing this, we have only added the lanthanum in the inoculant, so the residual percentage is the same. So when I say low, it is that we are able to address the issue of the microporosity. So from this case study, both the cerium and the lanthanum based, what we can see is both can be used. Cerium is preferable in thin sections. The lanthanum based inoculant is in both thin and preferably in thick section. And lanthanum based, you can have a pure lanthanum based magnesium alloy or a inoculant, depending on how the foundry castings and your processes are. So these are real-time case studies based on our visits, based on what we have then come and taken and done the exercises in the R&D center, and then given it back to the customer, and where we have got the feedback where it is working well. So with this, you will be able to, as I told you earlier, based on case studies, by the time this slides were presented to you, you would be correlating it to some of your conditions at the foundries. Some times where you had to rely on some inputs or some hunches or some hearing that increase the magnesium percentage in a particular grade and do it, or you do this. So we have been able to give you real-time case studies by which you can appreciate, learn, apply, and benefit in all the work that you are doing in your foundries. I once again thank you all for patient listening. I thank my organization SNAM Alloys for providing me this opportunity to and permit me to share the case studies. I thank Mr. Sandeep Kulkarni and DFG for this excellent platform where they provide a lot of enlightening experiences to the Foundry. And I thank you all for taking time on a Sunday evening to listen to this. And I hope it is very beneficial for you in the long run and in the short run too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It was a very nice presentation and very useful case studies for all of us. So we can really correlate with the situation we are facing right now, and somehow we can able to get some good solutions by using these case studies. So thank you very much for sharing these case studies. I think last time when we have been part of this panel discussion, we have decided that we can go for case studies regularly. So this is one of the case studies.
Yeah. Sure.
We are definitely going for in future also we are going for some case studies at least couple of times in a year at least, because
Sure, sir.
there are issues, there are problems coming up in foundries, and whenever a problem comes with some solution comes and those solutions have been accumulated, you can say it's a learning that you have been capturing and recording at your end, which is
Yes.
helpful to the we can say to the foundry fraternity and to the all foundry months. So as we always say that in IITF also in IITF they are saying that you have to preserve whatever learning you have.
Yes.
So same thing we are doing here, and thank you very much for sharing all those things. Any questions? Please, you can raise your hands or keep it in chat box so that if you have any question or any problem related to this kind of situation or any help you want from him. Yes, Prayut. Prayut, you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Presentation, first of all, and I must congratulate you. The way you have presented, the style of presentation was very good, really, and at a very right pace. I have two questions. What are the charge is considered in this? I think the charge is not mentioned, or I may have missed it. Like what percentage of scrap or this thing you have added in your case studies, because I guess that also plays a very important role.
Correct. See, wherever, as I told you, wherever a customer has provided us a condition, we use the same charge mix. But whenever in our R&D center, when we do our trials, like the size standardization trials, so we use anywhere between 10 to 20% pig iron and around 30 to 40% of CRCA, and the balance is the returns. So this is how we normally do here. So because normally you see the yield of ductile iron casting is somewhere between 50 to 55%. Or if you use good feeding aids and you are able to get, I've seen people get up to 60%, which means there is a 40% returns that are there to be consumed. So we generally work on those lines. So 40 to 20, or 10% to 15% pig iron means the balance is made up by CRCA. These are the normal charge mixes that we use at the R&D Foundry. And we did some experiments. We have done a charge mix, as Mr. Sandeep said, slowly. There are some other case studies that are being, prepared at the R&D center. We have found that trying to avoid pig iron doesn't provide good nucleation sites. From our experience, we would definitely recommend a minimum 10% pig iron. I hope I have answered your question of what was used in the experiment.
Yes,
and
sir.
What is also a general recommendation.
Yes.
I think, sir, you are rightly saying that some percentage, at least 5 to 10% pig iron is recommended. But in most of the cases or most of the areas, it is very difficult to get low sulfur pig iron. especially in Kolhapur area, it is very difficult to get low sulfur pig iron, or the consistency of sulfur in pig iron is very difficult to manage. So in that
Yes.
case, whether the reconditioning or anything will help in maintaining the we can say consistency or the nucleation level in the metal.
Uh, Sir, it is only, as I said, so you have to reduce the percentage of pig iron. That's why I said, where from 10 to 20, you have to regulate the percentage of pig iron that you're adding. But definitely pig iron has elements that are providing nucleation site. So, and I have also observed it that we are not able to get a good quality pig iron. See what happens, it is being taken from the iron ore, and wherever the mines are, the quality as it goes in depth, it is going to vary. So it is something that the people who are producing the pig iron and selling to us, they do not have a choice either. Whatever is presented in nature, and that is what they are able to use. I would suggest that use what is the minimum that or the maximum that you can use, but don't because some people say I'm going to use 100% borings. Please don't do that. See what is the maximum percentage of pig iron that can be used, because if you're going to add CRCA a lot, then you need to add the balance material also. You need more of ferrosilicon. So it is this is something, as I told you, that's why in our this Indian foundry ecosystem, we have some constraints. We are not able to get very high purity charge material.
Solar metal is another we can say one more.
Yes, definitely. But solar metal also, is expensive. Again, that is why a lot of cost economics comes into play. When we look at India as a foundry source, as a casting source, so when it is being looked at as a price competitive market, then that is where the problem is. But when it is thought of long run, then we can also invest some extra into our raw material. Solar metal at some point of time all foundries were using, but today even there is a scarcity of solar metal, and it is expensive, because they also have a couple of sources, some from South Africa, some from Canada, and what is coming from a different region has different percentages.
Sir, you talk about the no this magnesium alloy sizes. Normally 5 to 15, or you can say 15 to 25 are the basic sizes where most of the people are using.
Yes.
You are talking about 2 to 20.
Yes.
Correct. So whether we can say the distribution of 2 to 20 is to be maintained properly, because if we can say the percentage of two size 2 to 5 or 2 to 7 or 2 to 10 is more, then there are chances that it can burn faster, or it will give a less recovery. So the percentage of those particular thing has to be matched properly. It is very
Yeah.
important.
Yes, it is.
Just like an
And
AFS sieve distribution we do in AFS.
correct. So generally what we have seen, because we have been doing this magnesium alloy right from 1992, so it is almost 28 years. So when we crush to these sizes, we have around 2 to 10%, 2 to 10 mm is around 30 to 35%, and 70 to 65% is 10 to 25. So that is the distribution in which it comes. So it is not that you are going to have an excess of the finer sizes, and that is going to result in losses. So this is generally the typical distribution you will get when it is crushed to 2 to 20.
Regarding same thing, I have one more question. I think this is not a question. I will say like a suggestion, or I will say it is my opinion. We can say
Yes.
we are talking more about magnesium. We are talking about treatment ladder. We are talking about sandwich method, everything. But I think less focus is or low focus is given on the covering punching which we are using, the quality and the percentage. I think I will like to have one case study from you in future on that particular aspect, because I think that plays an important role in reducing not only the percentage of magnesium, but improving the nodal count, improving the nodularity, and we can say reducing the violence of the reaction. But I think we have
Definitely, sir.
very low focus given to that particular aspect in the magnesium treatment process. So I would like to have one or two case studies from few on that particular aspect in future.
Excellent, sir. Thank you for the suggestion. It is very important because we have found, as you rightly said, the punching scrap that people buy. Some people, casting like a plate and put it. Some people use the whatever are the small what is on top of the molding box. They collect it. They use that as a covering scrap. So even in the use of covering alloy in the treatment lateral, we find a lot of variations. Excellent idea from you. We will take it, sir. We will do some trials at the R&D center, and we will definitely provide you with a case study on that.
Because one more aspect in that is on the shop floor at night, we can say 2 o'clock in the morning, when a person or supervisor getting low nodularity or bad quality of microstructure, only thing what he had is a variation in punching. He
Correct.
can reduce punching weight and all these things and get the things done. That is the only solution he had at that particular time. So
Okay.
we can make this
It can
as
definitely make a difference. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right. So we will work on a case study, and we'll be able to present something to you on that, and also on the charge mix. I think on both we will be having something ready for some seminar in the future.
Sure, sir, sure. Okay, any more questions from anybody? I don't see anything in chat box right now. I think most of the things you have clarify in your presentation itself. So I think that is why one of no much questions are
Good.
arising.
Hope it is a good
Hopefully,
learning.
and
Yeah.
that is why I think this is the success of the, we can say, this webinar. I think even the feedback that we got, almost 100% is excellent.
Okay.
So that
Thank
is,
you.
I think it's a good successful webinar, we can say, and people will get a lot of good things out of this webinar, and they will implement it. As your first slide says, not only reading or hearing.
Yes.
I think implementation is more important.
Exactly. Doing.
Whatever we practice, then only we get a mastery on that.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm expecting the people will
Yes.
practice these things in their foundries and will get expertise in that as well. So thank
That
you,
is the
sir, for
main.
your
That is the
time.
main purpose. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
And all the
And
participants, thank you very much for attending this webinar by taking out your valuable time on Sunday evening. So thank you very much, and I hope we will have a long relationship in future as well. We have many more webinars to come. So thank you all participants, and Najimuddin sir, for your time
thank
and
you.
presentation. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sandeep. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.